Greetings, everyone from New York City. I wish I could be in India now as I speaking in real time, but I'll do my best from quite a distance away. The subject of breakdowns as breakthroughs. The subject of how having a breakdown can be something valuable, a catalyst for growth. I have two different angles from which I would like to approach this subject. The first angle is my experience as a psychotherapist. I was a psychotherapist in New York for 10 years, working with a lot of people who had severe emotional breakdowns, some labeled as psychoses, ended up in mental hospitals. Sometimes terrible things happened as the result of that. The second way I'd like to talk about it is my own life, some of the emotional breakdowns that I have had, and how they actually helped me grow. First, talking about my experience watching other people as a therapist. The first thing that I've seen is often when people have a breakdown, the people around them panic. Oh my God, and the first thing they want to do is make this person get back together, make them behave normally again, put on that mask again also. Often it's people's parents, their family members, getting them to a psychiatrist, getting them to a therapist, getting them quickly on medication so they behave more normally, so they're not crying so much, so their behavior isn't strange, so they're not so angry anymore, so they're not saying things that make other people uncomfortable. For me as a therapist, when people had emotional breakdowns, I never wanted to see people get on medication. Sometimes people wanted to get on medication. My attitude was, no. Let's not blunt these feelings. Let's not push down the feelings. Let's not split away from what's going on. Let's look at what's going on the inside. What can we learn from this breakdown? What can we learn from what is erupting? Often an emotional breakdown actually is a breakthrough. That's not how the world sees it most of the time. Often people who are normal in our world, people who are considered healthy, people who are considered functional, even ideals of being healthy and functional, often are very emotionally shut down, split off, their feelings are buried, their history is buried, their traumas are pushed down, and they're all pushed down and buried so that people can function in relationship often to the people who traumatized them. This is true for so many children. To be able to survive in relation to their parents, other family members who may have harmed them, they have to shut down. They have to keep their feelings pressed down, sometimes for years and decades. And when they can't handle being shut down anymore, when something in the external world maybe goes a little wrong and triggers them, these feelings start to come up and they get labeled as mental problems. They get labeled with certain diagnoses and get fancy words like psychosis and schizophrenia and bipolar and mania and depression and whatever else. All their erupting things get labeled with these problemed words. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, oh, this is really an opportunity to look at the real you. This is an opportunity to look at your pain, to look at your history, to look at your trauma, to look at your real feelings, to look at what your life is below the surface of your mask. This is painful. But if you get support, if you get people around you who love you, if you can figure out how to love yourself, sometimes if you can get away from people who disrespect you, you can get into an environment where you are more valued, where people can listen to you, can figure out with you, can ask you questions about what does this erupting material really mean? Where does it come from? What is its historical root? If you can do that, if you can find other people to help you do that, that from what I've seen with the people I worked with, is the beginning of tracing the history of your past, learning who you really are, and being able to put yourself back together without having to wear a mask. By being able to be who you really are and having the opportunity to work out these historical problems, not blot them out, not push them down, not push them away, not dissociate from them, but to be able to deal with them and to deal with the truth of your history and the truth of who you really are beneath your traumas. This is how all these erupting things that get labeled so negatively by our families, by the mental health system, by society, this is how these things can be transformative into helping us grow and become more authentic people who actually love our lives. I've seen this with many people. I've also seen people who were terrified of this material, terrified of what was coming up, or had so many people around them who were so terrified of what was coming up, terrified of these people's expressions of their trauma, metaphorical or direct expressions of their trauma, that they literally put them in a hospital, got them drugged, and then were more comfortable. And sometimes people themselves were more comfortable feeling shut down. I never want to say it's easy to go through a breakdown. I want to always say, very painful, very awful. It's a very natural thing to want to make those feelings go away. That's why it does take a lot of support to use those erupting feelings for good and for growth. And I think as I close, I'd like to talk a little bit about myself, the person I was and the person I am now. That transformation in my life from being a very shut down person, a hurt person, a person who lost my voice, a person who learned mostly successfully how to survive living in a home with my traumatizers, learning how to accept abuse, learning how to lose myself. Sometimes eruptions of my feelings and my anger would come out. I was self-destructive in a lot of ways, destructive toward other people at various times. Not someone I was proud of. I was someone who didn't love myself or love others very much. I didn't know how to be a very good friend to myself or others. Didn't know how to stand up for myself out in the world. Starting in my early 20s, it's like I couldn't keep my facade of being normal in place anymore. I started having breakdowns. I started having eruptions of traumatic memories. I started speaking about things that were taboo, that I saw in the world, things that had happened to me. I went from being someone who my parents, my traumatizing parents, were very comfortable with, into someone who they were uncomfortable around. They didn't like it. Sometimes I didn't like it. Sometimes I felt crazy. Sometimes I felt very depressed, very lost, very confused, sometimes very obsessive, very compulsive, sometimes very, very anxious. But some part of me was strong and also had some support from new friends in my life. Some part of me, thankfully, had the strength to be able to get away from my parents, sometimes early on, even for long periods of time, not wanting to go home, not wanting to be around them. Also, writing in my journal a lot, just writing everything that I was feeling down, writing my memories that were coming up, writing it all down, writing about abuses that had happened to me. And it was like I got a thread, something that I could hold onto that brought me into a deeper part of myself, that some inner voice in me said, Daniel, this is true. This will save your life. This will help you grow. And that has what's happened to me again and again and again, such that I really dropped my mask. I realized how fake I was once upon a time when I was younger, and I didn't even know how fake I was. But all that pain and horror and ugliness that I went through, things that were at various points psychiatrically labeled. People told me, you need to go on meds for this. You need to go on psychiatric medication. My mother telling me, I think you need to talk to a psychiatrist. Maybe you're bipolar, maybe you're XYZ. And me saying, no, 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 no. This is helping me grow. This is helping me become more real. Yes, I make other people more uncomfortable. Yes, I shame people who traumatized me. I don't make them comfortable anymore. Yes, my parents don't like me anymore. They're threatened by me. They're scared of what I might say. And sometimes I'm scared too. But now, more and more and more, I have me. And that's been so valuable for me. And I've seen this with others. The value, the real, deep, honest, true value of being a real person, no matter what the cost. And I don't want to give false promises and say, oh, the cost is you'll get yourself and it'll be a little painful, but you'll get yourself, it'll be wonderful. Well, it is wonderful, but the consequences have been terrible. I don't have a relationship with my parents anymore. They despise me. They've said horrible things about me in public, lied about me a lot, disinherited me. But I did get me. That's the key for me, though, is that it's not just about emotionally knowing the truth. It's also, yes, knowing the truth, yes, holding the truth, yes, learning how to love myself, yes, giving myself my own support system of people who love me, but also learning how to work in the world, work hard, be a good worker, figuring out how to function outside of my family's system. Because when I got more real, they didn't love me anymore. They dropped their mask of pretending to be out for me and for my benefit. I had to find a new family for myself because being honest and being real threatened them too much. And I've seen this with a lot of other people. To heal on the growth process is threatening often to the family system. It's threatening to many old friends. It's threatening to normal people. Sometimes it's easier to shut down. Sometimes it's easier to go on meds. Sometimes it's easier to even listen to therapists who say, well, you have to learn to let it go. You have to forgive your traumatizers. I've had therapists like that. I've actually never had a therapist who I felt really helped me. The therapy that helped me was loving myself, growing, finding supportive people, getting away from my traumatizing family, figuring out how to work, and now sharing my message and being useful to others. That is what inspires me to keep doing this and to keep growing. So thank you for listening to me, and I wish you all only the best.